Hi, it's Sunday, 4:30, 12th of February, and I am going to do exactly what I did yesterday very quickly. You can see lots of clouds. Look at that. That's a jet trail right there. I just saw one go directly over the house. You can see it off in the distance there now. Yep. Lots of humidity in the atmosphere. Here's a look at Canyon Mountain. However, it is not humidifying the air in the clouds above the peak, so that's a promising thing. But that chemtrail, that jet trail up there is concerning. I do not expect to have a very good night of observations. There is a look at the sky above the tip of the observatory just for future reference. And I've already tilted the scope towards Jupiter, and I'll do my alignments. I noticed from yesterday to today that the clock was off by 2 seconds on the Gemini 2, so it gained about 2 seconds over the actual time because the Gemini 2 is not able to get in touch with the GPS system, but my GPS clock is. And that's it. I'll just get back to you today or later on tonight and show you how poorly the sky reveals itself. Here's something interesting I like to see. When I first boot up the mount and I tell it to go to a planet, I like it to appear somewhere on the screen, and there you can just barely see the limb of Jupiter. Now, you wouldn't use a planet in order to set up your positioning for synchronization or alignments, but it's nice to see that anything you point the scope at will end up somewhere in the 15 by 20 degree field of view that the display monitor shows, because then you can center it up without having to search for it. And with any luck, you can see Jupiter somewhere. It's to the left quadrant near the lines at about the 8 o'clock position. If you can see it through the screen, I can't, I'm too close to it. Anyway, so that's the view through the finder scope. Next thing I might do is center it up. Here's Jupiter. I can see the bands, just the equatorial bands, and I believe there's one of the Galileans just outside the limb to the 4 o'clock position. So I was able to set the focus reasonably well, and now what I'm going to do is let the scope just drift along with it and see if it's no longer centered in the screen after a while, typically 15 minutes to half an hour. It's now 6 o'clock. Scope's been tracking Jupiter for a while now. It's certainly no longer in the middle. I'd say about 3 or 4 arc minutes off. I might make a slight adjustment to recenter it again using the declination and azimuth mechanical adjustments on the mount. I can see the 4 Galileans there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to allow it to get a little darker and run a bellwether test against M77 and see if there's enough resolution of detail that it's worthwhile going after anything else tonight. Sky conditions, however, were not particularly, did not augur well for a good deep sky night tonight though, however, but I'll test that. Well, this may be my last chance to have a look at M74. It's not quite sky dark, but I can see the spiral arms of the galaxy on the screen. It's a galaxy in Pisces, magnitude 9.4, 10 by 9.4 arc minutes, some 35 million light years distant, so relatively close. Now if we examine the screen well, you'll see the spiral arms shooting out in a clockwise direction around the core of the galaxy. I'm very impressed by this because the sky didn't really look that promising this evening, but look at that. M74. So this is the official capture for this baby. There's our best view. I'm going to let it hang out a little bit. I'll probably center it up, give it another 15 minutes, but I'm close to losing it into the observatory northwestern roof try. But there we go, spiral arms, very large, bright, roundish central core. I'm totally surprised by this, given the fact the sky is still somewhat light. Now, I'm not sure when I'm going to start losing aperture to the roof tri, but I'm going to leave this thing set up a little bit to come back to it. Wow. And then we'll go on to 77 and see if we can't make out that circular ring and the central bar a little better than we have. All right, center it up. Maybe I'll go to 77 and come right back. Well, I'm going to lose 74 soon, but here we go. Once again, look at that spiralicity in the arms. Very large, expansive. We're starting to block the aperture soon, so I'm going to get one nice more capture of 74. Oh, look at that. Very nice. Brilliant. Expansive. Spiral-esque. Gorgeous. And this, of course, without the actual data on the screen that I had the previous image. M74. See this. Wow. Very impressive. I guess I'm going to be out freezing some more tonight. Here we go. Messier 77, a galaxy in Cetus, magnitude 8.9. By the way, 74 was in Pisces. I mistook that. 7.3 by 6.3 arc minutes, or roughly the same distance, 60 million light years. As I said, it's a, they're not saying what the characteristics, but I know it's a barred spiral. The core is very brilliant. And under the better conditions, we'll see a ring around it and the central bar will become more distinct. But it's so brilliant right now in the central core. I think it's to some degree overshadowing some of the fainter detail. We saw this with M42 last night, that if you have the flood value too high, it overwhelms the imaging system and then you lose image contrast. But look at that aura all around the core of the galaxy where the spiral arms are located. I wish, like M74, we could actually see the arms, but they may be a bit fainter on this, although the galaxy itself is quite brilliant, especially in the core. Okay, so that's enough of looking to the west. And now we'll have to shoot to the east. Really captured this. This is, of course, Messier 1, the remnant of a supernova. Anyway, I could give you another view, and I also use it as a bit of a bellwether, but we already saw that M74 gave a nice view of its spiral arms. Our real test this evening, as I promised, will be the Horsehead Nebula. It's associated with the flame, NGC 2024. So let's drive to it now. That's a pretty decent view right there in itself. Messier 1. Okay, here we have NGC 2024. It's a nebula in Orion, 30 by 30 arc minutes, as large as the moon. It's 1,500 light years away, so that's a little closer than M42 and 43 itself. There is, of course, a dark nebula associated with it called Barnard's 33, otherwise known as the Horsehead, and I'll leave it up to you to determine whether it's visible on the screen. Now, it's pretty clear to see why that's called the flame. Here's the orientation. It makes it look like one. Now, sweeping 2024, you can imagine what you want in those dark nebulosity associated with it. I can certainly see something that looks like a horse head. Yes, indeed. That's very spectacular nebulosity. And I think it's just north slightly of the belt of Orion. Very impressive, very beautiful. Boy, this shows you why you want to get out and do night sky astronomy, especially if you have a smaller scope like I have, a 6-incher, and you want to go deep like the bigger scopes, 15 to 20 inches in aperture. That's the view you get. Stunning. Oh, had to flip it, the equatorial again. Going after NGC 772, Galaxy in Aries, magnitude 10.3, fairly large, 7.5 by 4.3 arc minutes. It's a spiral, small class B. I think that means barred. It's at 110 million light years, so this is a little more distant than M74 and 77. And you can see the bright core right there in the center of the screen, plus some extensions. But it doesn't really have that much in the way of detail. Once again, centering it right just above the dark bar of contrast on the screen, we get our best view. So there's our look. On to other things that I should have caught when the weather was better, if the weather had been better over the last month or two. NGC 936, another galaxy. This one's in Cetus, magnitude 10.1, 4.3 by 3.8, so pretty much a face-on spiral galaxy with a bar. It's got an O, I'm not sure what that means, and a small a in its designation. Those are all descriptors, 60 million light years distant. And the view we're getting is right about there. Looks kind of comatose to me. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I'm not seeing much in the way of real detail, and it's a very inconvenient position for me to be holding a handheld camera. But there's your view for the record. GC 1342, an open cluster in Perseus. Almost the telescope's clear as we're flying. Magnitude 6.7, 14 arc minutes in size, some 40 stars, the brightest of which is 8.8, 2,200 light years distant. And this screen is just peppered with these babies. Clearly spilling all the way across the field. I wish I could get a view of it all at once. Maybe if I really back the camera. No, the dark bar is still there. Wow. 80 stars. Tiny little town. Town of stars, but bigger than many open clusters. More populated than some. Okay, I've been looking for something like this. This is NGC 1514. It's a planetary nebula in Taurus. It's pretty much culminating right now, straight overhead near the zenith. Magnitude 10.8. It's 120 by 90 arc seconds in size, which means it should be fully resolvable. Its magnitude is 9.5 of the central star. It's 2,500 light years distant. And because I'm about to wrap up for the evening, having seen the flame, I'm going to carry that away in my heart, in my imagination. What I'm going to do is we're going to look at NGC 1514 using various exposure times to get a sense of which flood setting and sensitivity does a really good job of revealing both the central star and the nebulosity. Right here is the view we're getting. I can't see it very well, frankly, folks, because it's right sticking in my face. Let me settle down on the floor, and then I'm going to reduce the flood, and we're going to step through this baby so we can get a better sense of future exposure times for planetary nebulas. Because frankly, at these exposure times, stars look too bloated, and you can't distinguish planetary nebulas from stars themselves. So the light just blends together. So here we go. Although I got a suspicion where that baby is, I'm going to start stepping through the exposure times. I'll let you know as I do it. Okay, it's pretty clear where the planetary nebula is in this case. Look at that. Very large. The central star is bloated because it's so bright. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to try to find the optimal setting anyway for future reference. So let's start. I'm just going to step down through the settings the best I can. Now remember, the interface on this CCD imager box is not all that handy, but let's have a look. Go to custom. Oops, see already. Custom. Nope, that's navigating. Custom. Oh, one of two. See that? Okay, custom. Manual. Go down. Manual. Now watch as I go down through the flood settings. Oh, that was just navigating. Okay, 128. 64. Now remember, the image will regenerate much more quickly as we go down the flood settings. Stars will look more pointillistic. We're going to start, I think, at about 8. See what comes of it. We'll leave the sensitivity rating at 42 decibels. Okay, there's our star. It looks pretty much like a star. I cannot tell if there's any nebulosity around it at 8 flood. 8 flood is like, if we're gathering photons for half a second in over 6 passes, then I'd be surprised at 8 flood. All right, Jeff, press the right buttons. 16 flood. Let's see what happens to that baby. It's going to take a little longer to generate the image. I'm not seeing anything other than a star right now. 32. I know at 64 flood it's about 6 exposures at 2/3 of a second for 4 seconds. Why, I would not know that the planetary nebula at 32 flood. I'm not seeing the nebulosity at my angle, although I think I see it on the camera. Oh, I just shifted. See, that's problematic. Let's let it get stabilized again before I go to 128. I think I'm seeing the nebular ring. I'm certainly seeing it on the handheld camera screen. So there, 64 flood is probably it's a good general setting. 4 seconds of exposure time. Images compile fairly quickly. You don't disturb the image stream as much through motion. 128. Let's give it now. This is going to be at about 8 seconds to generate this image. Yeah, I can see it on the handheld. So 128 is not too bad. Now we'll go back to the original 256. Oops, I'm going to go try to navigate down. No, that's the wrong button. Let's navigate down. Come on, go down and sensory setting. It's up and down. All right, 36. Give it a chance. Oh, we're running a little long on this video right here. I'm going to run out of battery if I'm not. Let's go down all the way to 6 decibels. That's the baseline sensitivity. Probably not a bad idea to experiment with 128 and maybe 32 decibel as a general setting. Okay, now the image should be forming. Yeah, 6 decibels doesn't help us very much, does it? Look, everything dropped out. Now if I strike the right button, I want to go to 12. Remember, it's going to take a while for it to generate. I'm going to 18. I believe it's every 8 decibels doubles the sensitivity, if I remember correctly. I think we're beginning to see the nebulosity at 18 decibels surrounding the central star. Ooh. 24. 30. This is running a bit long. I want to knock off. I want to carpe noctem out on this. Give it a set. Give it a chance. Boy, look at the different writings of the screen. Where's all those little icicle patterns coming from? And then 36. Each one of these iterations takes about 16 seconds at 256 flood to really formulate itself. So let's not be too hard on this thing right now in terms of deriving any sense of what it's doing. I just navigated. 42. And the maximum sensitivity is 44.8. That means every one of the little CCD image points is at its highest bias to detect photons. Alright folks, this is running close to 6 minutes on this view. I'm going to bail and turn it back to something that we can go out on before I say carpe noctem. I'm not sure how Messier 45 ended up getting on Messier's list. It's actually the Pleiades. It's been known for thousands of years. It's an open cluster in Taurus, magnitude 1.2 combined light, some 100 stars 440 light years distant. The brightest stars are visible to the unaided eye, resolvable at about magnitude 5.5 to 6. And here's a small view of it, but what I want to point you out to is there's some newly forming star stuff right here, and I'm going to navigate to it, but this is supposed to be pretty much the central region of the Pleiades. Once again, keep in mind, this is a large cluster, probably several degrees across in both directions, and it is a star-forming region, and the stars are probably some 500,000 years old. But I want to capture the nebulosity, and there's no way with this scope that I'm going to be able to frame the entire cluster. So let me shift it over into that nebulosity so we can have a look at it. I don't think it's got its own, the nebulosity has its own designation, but it's quite possible. So here we go. I'm going to move things around and we're going to come back before we knocked him out. Okay, so here's our view. I've shifted a star that was pretty much close to this upper left-hand corner down into the center. And you know, I can see the nebulosity. It isn't well defined, but there is some nebulosity there. Not striking enough view, though, for us to go out on. So maybe we should go back to the flame NGC 2024, and I'll turn on the color as long as the battery holds out on the camera. So I've switched the imager to day mode, and something very peculiar is happening. Look at this. It's like totally overexposed image of the flame, NGC 2024. I can make it fainter. I'm not getting any color, but if I put the handheld camera straight on, I've been sitting here for about a minute waiting for it to recomposite the image, and it's just this brilliant luminosity, extraordinarily brilliant, and it hasn't settled out yet. One thing I can try to do is I don't know, I can't figure out why it's giving such a brilliant view. It's just the biases are completely off and there's no color being exposed, but look at the amount of brilliance that's being presented. I can try to play with the exposure times a little bit. Maybe reducing the flood will fix the problem, but it shouldn't be like that. Let's go to 64 flood. Actually, sometimes I've seen it over bias like this, and I've had to walk it down and run it back up again. So let's see if that takes care of the issue. Okay, let the image generate. Yeah, it certainly is improved. Let me get out of this settings mode. And let's see what happens to it. Exit and save and give it a chance to formulate. Yeah, it's not overwhelmed now, is it? Okay, I'm going to come back to it in a second after it has a chance to generate. This should be some color in this thing, but we'll see. All right. Flamey on the screen. Wonder where your cold dark matter is being. Okay, I think the image has had a good chance to compile. I am seeing some red in this image. Hopefully it'll come out on the handheld. Maybe I can optimize the view so we can see as much of it as possible. There's the flame. You can see the russet colors in it. I think I'll leave it in color mode, and hopefully if we get another good night tomorrow, we'll play with M1 and M42. See if we can get some color out of it. This is certainly a beautiful view. Look at that. The flame, Nebula, and Horsehead. Barnard 33, flame NGC 2023, Carpe Noctem, and good